I'm Tim Vi Tran, founder of the Ivy Group, a boutique commercial real estate advisory and brokerage firm based in Fremont in the Silicon Valley, California. On the occasion of our nation's 250th birthday, I am sharing the first two chapters of real personal stories from my upcoming book, Owning, Leasing, Selling, and Buying Commercial Properties. Advice from a time-tested investor, strategist, and broker. I will share the first chapter here and then the second chapter next. A brief introduction, giving thanks where it's due. Before sharing 3 decades of commercial real estate investment insights in this book, I feel compelled to first acknowledge that I owe my successes, lessons learned, and countless blessings to the freedom and opportunity America has provided me. From a 7-year-old refugee from Vietnam, rescued from a fishing boat in the South China Sea with my parents and siblings, to attending a prestigious military academy with a full scholarship, to being a software engineer for the nation's top defense contractors, to becoming one of the best commercial real estate brokers and strategic advisors in Fremont, California, and Silicon Valley, to founding the Ivy Group and leading it for 26 years, and to being the husband to my wife, Tiffany, and the proud father to our two young daughters, whom we adore. Words can hardly describe my deep gratitude to the Almighty, the United States of America, to my parents, my family, my clients, team members, referral partners, and all those who have inspired, taught, and helped me. My American dream is still unfolding. This book is dedicated to my loving parents, Cole and Lynn Tran. Chapter 1: Who I am, where I came from, and what shaped my journey. As of the writing of this book in 2026, it has been 31 years since I first invested in commercial real estate. It has been 26 years since I founded the Ivy Group, a top boutique commercial real estate brokerage firm in Silicon Valley. It was recently ranked as the #1 boutique CRE firm in Fremont, California by ChatGPT. Since I started the Ivy Group in 2000, we have completed around $500 million of CRE transactions. I expect the volume to grow significantly in the next 5 to 10 years. Far more important than the transaction volume is how I have grown personally on the journey from poverty to possibility to prosperity and to becoming a fuller and better version of myself by serving and empowering others in my community. To me, the more meaningful story is about a young immigrant boy without money, connections, or much understanding of the world. With nothing but hopes and dreams, that young boy nevertheless built a successful life through determination and perseverance upon the foundational values instilled by my parents and enforced by my own experiences as a first generation immigrant. Surviving hardship in early years turned out to be a great gift. Escaping Vietnam on a boat as a 7-year-old. On December 24th, 1978, as a 7-year-old, I boarded a refugee boat with my parents and three siblings, Kathy, Terry, and Betty, to escape Vietnam. I remember being abruptly awakened by my father and mother. They dressed me and shoved me into a double-deck fishing boat with approximately 300 refugees packed tightly together. My parents took all four of us kids, I'm the second child and the oldest son, to escape the hopeless life under the new Vietnamese Communist government. Through several attempts, my father negotiated a free ride for my family in return for piloting the boat. He was instrumental in bringing together a team who dreamed of escaping Vietnam to America for better opportunities. My father is my favorite hero. With little experience as a sailor, my father captained and steered the fishing boat out of Vietnam and headed toward Pulau Bidong Island, Malaysia. He took nearly 300 people's lives into his hands and with little help and food for 3 days on his own. Both my parents passed away in 2025, 6 months apart. They were both Chinese born and lived in Vietnam before they took us all out for America. Even though they had very little formal education, they were the most important people in my life, and I have yet to meet any person in my life of my parents' caliber. As the boat was tossing in the open seas for 3 days, there was no food or fresh water. We lowered cans tied to the end of a string to scoop seawater to drink. I saw Thai pirates approaching and boarding the boat. They pillaged jewelry and took food and whatever else they could away from the escapees. My father's wedding ring was taken by the pirates. The boat had been damaged during the journey and eventually landed on Bidong, located in the South China Sea. That was December 28, 1978. I remember being carried off the fishing boat by my father. Shortly after, the rough waves destroyed the fishing boat. Several people didn't make the journey. I witnessed one man being buried after reaching shore. The refugees who escaped Vietnam, landed in Malaysia, and eventually settled in America were often called boat people. I'm one of them. The military personnel arrived in jeeps and transported refugees up into the mountains of Bidang. I remember sleeping on self-made bamboo or wooden beds in the refugee camp. The island was isolated from the rest of the world. I experienced life with little food, mostly living off beans and coconut juice, which was plentiful in Bidong. Sometimes we got so hungry that my older sister and I would go to the end of the pier to fish. The water was contaminated because of the lack of sanitary infrastructure to accommodate a sudden surge of tens of thousands of refugees, who often used the pier to urinate and defecate into the water below. We could not catch any fish from there. Had we caught anything, it would not have been safe to eat. I know what hunger could do to drive little kids to search for food. As a young child, it was difficult to fully comprehend what was happening around me, nor did I fully understand the danger. I simply remember moments and sensations. Arriving in the US with nothing but hope and dreams. After 9 long months, my Aunt Sue and Uncle Kent sponsored us to come to America in August 1979. When we arrived at the airport in the US, my father spent most of the $20 he had in his pocket to buy ice cream and snacks for the four of us kids. This reflected his optimism, generosity, and gratitude despite hardship. It symbolized a mindset that said, we survived, we're alive. It's okay to enjoy a small moment of happiness. Perhaps that was the beginning of my lifetime love for different cultural foods. A Baptist church in Dallas gave us our first clothing. Surviving hardship creates a unique perspective on life. And my parents understood deeply what opportunity meant, and they passed this perspective to me and my three siblings. The determination to turn dreams and opportunities into success led to my accomplishment later. My family first lived in a rat and cockroach infested apartment in a low income, crime ridden area outside of Dallas called Oak Cliff, where we stayed until my middle school years. My father worked the second swing shift and was robbed one evening while walking from the parking lot to the apartment. We were living on food stamps. My parents worked multiple jobs to raise us. They instill in us values, resilience, and a strong work ethic. We escaped Vietnam and chose to come to America because we believed in the American dream. I remember how excited my parents were when a few years later they saved enough money to buy our first home in Grand Prairie, a suburb outside Dallas. Perhaps that played a subconscious part in my lifetime's fascination with real estate. My parents raised us all in that modest 1,300 square foot home from my middle school years until I left for college in New York. Our house even survived a fire. The hardship of those years turned out to be a great gift to me. Looking back, I realize now that my immigrant experience became the launch pad for my career and life. My parents were different from many traditional Asian parents. They never pressure or place unrealistic expectations on me as the oldest son. Instead, they allow me the freedom to pursue my own path. They never talked down to me. They never doubted me. They believed in my ability to achieve whatever I dreamed. Their love, support, encouragement, and role modeling of hard work, decency, and values have made me what I am. I know they are proud of me. Going to college with a full scholarship. Speaking no English as an 8-year-old newly arrived immigrant, I started in first grade. but in middle school, I caught up on academics and skipped seventh grade, jumping from sixth to eighth grade. All my siblings started back 2 grades because of language deficiencies as new immigrants, but they caught up later. During grade school, middle school, and high school, I always performed well academically and athletically. I excelled in math in middle and high school. My competitive nature developed through academics, math competitions, track, and cross-country running. I understood early on that I wanted more from life than the circumstances in which I grew up. When I was young, I dreamt that one day I would become an astronaut, inventor, or entrepreneur. I studied hard and got good grades in school. By middle school and high school, I realized that very little could stop me when I truly committed myself to something. Even though I was still figuring out who I wanted to become, I always believed there were greater opportunities available to me. When I graduated from South Grand Prairie High School in 1990, I was in the top 1% of my class and received a 4-year full scholarship, including room and board. I attended one of the 5 prestigious military academies in the U.S., the United States Merchant Marine Academy, USMMA, and Kings Point, an hour's train ride from New York City. The military training there also taught me discipline, tenacity, and leadership. I was the first child to move so far away from our Texas home to New York. Although it was emotionally difficult for my parents, they supported the decision because they understood it represented a major opportunity. Had I declined USMMA in New York, my life might have remained much smaller and more limited geographically. I might have never left Texas or expanded my worldview. At USMMA, I studied systems engineering, focusing on design and using my analytical and hands-on skills. The 4-year hands-on educational and military training instilled in me the principles of living with integrity, ambition, valor, loyalty, and sound judgment. The motto of my alma mater is acta non verba, meaning deeds, not words. I try to live up to it by serving others and carrying a zero excuse mentality. While 90% of the student body was white, I fit in perfectly as an Asian American from Dallas. I enjoy meeting classmates from all walks of life in various parts of the country. Although Dallas is a big city, I learned so much from other cadets in the academy. I quickly realized that at USMMA, I was competing academically and athletically with the big boys from around the country, and I enjoyed the challenge. Graduating from military academy, working for defense contractors. I also wanted to become successful, though the meaning of success itself evolved over time. After college, I worked at the nation's largest defense contractors, including Rosenblatt and Sons, Lockheed Martin, and eventually Northrop Grumman. After receiving my bachelor's degree in systems engineering from USMMA in 1994, I relocated to Washington, D.C. to work for several defense contractors while completing a master's degree in information systems with a concentration in software engineering in 1998. I attended graduate school at Central Michigan University, CMU, off campus at night and on weekends. Sleeping 4 to 5 hours each day for 2 years, I worked full time up to 60 hours a week, switching constantly between day, night, and graveyard shifts for nonstop operations at Lockheed Martin's Management and Data Systems, MNDS. Lockheed Martin reimbursed 90% of my tuition. Through my employee jobs, I earned enough money to invest in real estate. My first real estate investment in 1999 was successful, co-owning with my sister and brother-in-law and other investors a 26-acre vacant lot in Houston, Texas. With subdivision and entitlement, we sold a 5-acre piece first to break even, then sold the remaining 21 acres to a developer at 100% profit. That was my first taste of success with commercial real estate. After earning my master's degree at CMU, I resigned from Lockheed Martin in the summer of 1999. I relocated to California to rejoin Lockheed Martin, eventually settling in Fremont, California. In 2002, I joined Northrop Grumman as a software engineer. I traveled the world to develop and deploy high-tech tools in order to secure our nation's interests. I was awarded the Guardian of Freedom Award in 2004, recognized for extraordinary performance and dedicated service to our nation to help safeguard our freedom and combat terrorism. I worked on highly classified, sensitive government and defense-related projects at Northrop Grumman. Though indirectly for the government or intelligence agencies, the operations still carry substantial risk. Our team went above and beyond by placing ourselves in harm's way as we completed top secret mission critical assignments. Part of my work involved spending long hours inside secure, windowless facilities and in the field with a very limited group of colleagues. Much of the work was compartmentalized, secretive, and on a need to know basis. Although the work paid very well and offered exciting opportunities when I was young, over time I was unsure I would spend all my life isolated inside secure buildings. Another aspect of the job involved international travel and highly sensitive reconnaissance related assignments. The missions involve small teams with specialized expertise operating under significant risk in remote areas. My maritime engineering background and expertise with Unix and Linux systems were a specialized technical skill set that made me valuable for certain operations, particularly in high pressure, mission critical environments where rapid problem solving was essential. My role involved operating and troubleshooting highly technical systems in the field with minimal outside support. Sometimes I was on assignment overseas with my engineering team under aliases. I surrendered my real passport and cell phone. I had to keep my travels secret, including from my parents and siblings who never knew where I was going. Initially, my role was highly technical, particularly in software engineering. Over time, however, I began leading projects and gradually developed leadership capabilities. The dangers of classified work. Our teams operated under aliases and compartmentalized structures where individuals were granted access to only the information necessary to perform their specific roles. Even within large programs involving thousands of people, field teams remain small and tightly controlled. Although we were technically outside a war zone, some of the operations my team and I participated in could potentially have been interpreted as acts of war if discovered by foreign adversaries. At first, the excitement, travel, camaraderie, and high compensation made the work appealing. I was in my early 30s, and the sense of awe and honor outweighed the inherent danger. I was and always am very proud of my contribution to safeguard our nation's security, democracy, and freedom. Eventually, one mission changed my perspective entirely. I recall a moment when members of the team looked at one another and realized the danger had become very real. If we had been discovered and caught, the consequences could have been severe and potentially international in scale. My team completed the mission successfully and received recognition, including awards and a formal dinner in Washington, D.C. Life took an unexpected turn, and it was for the better. However, shortly after that mission, budget reductions dried up the funding for the program I was hired for at Northrop Grumman, which led to layoffs. I was among those laid off. One of the hardest realizations was understanding how disposable employees could become inside large government contract systems. One day, I felt highly valued because of my rare skill set and background. The next day, budget changes made me and my team expendable. That realization deeply affected me. Being laid off awoke the desire for a sense of control over my life and career. Looking back, I believe being laid off may have been one of the best things that ever happened to me. During the exit interview, I remember an HR representative telling me during the layoff process that every time one door closes, a bigger one opens. At that time, the statement sounded comforting but generically hollow. Years later, I realized how accurate it truly was. Although the experience of being laid off was painful emotionally and financially, It also became liberating. I despised the idea of spending my life climbing corporate ladders, competing internally for promotions, or chasing incremental raises and titles. At some point, I simply became tired of that system. I realized that I wanted to control my career without corporations, contracts, or federal funding decisions. Despite the excitement and prestige of the highly classified work, I eventually concluded that the danger, uncertainty, isolation, and lack of personal control were too much to handle. I yearned to live a simpler, stable life and to start my own family, which required being present and available. It became a turning point for me. I felt both relief and anxious, still figuring out exactly what I would pursue next. At the same time, the river of life was quietly carrying me in a different direction. Continue in chapter 2.